Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there. Hello everyone, this is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there.
My name is Richard Furr, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Gibbs, and I'm here to help you build your cloud computing career. Perhaps you desire to be a cloud architect, or an enterprise architect, or a solution architect, or maybe you want to be a network engineer or another technology professional. That's why I'm here to assist you and guide you to get to your best goal as fast as possible. I've been working in technology now for well over 25 years. And I've been helping others build their career for well over 25 years. And as it stands now, people that I've trained are working at Amazon, Apple, Cisco, IBM, Google, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini, Zscaler, Palo Alto Networks, and every other elite organization that's there. And the reason I come online at least once a week is because I remember when I started my career, and I thought certifications were going to get me a job and build my portfolio, and I spent an incredible amount of time, effort, and money on certifications, and no employer cared. And then I spoke to some tech career experts, and they guided me with exactly what I needed, and it was like almost overnight where I got my first job. And within 6 months, I was a lead architect, and within 2 years, a principal architect, because I did not learn by mistakes. I asked others who had been there, others who'd been highly successful, and that's why I do what I do, to save you from the effort that I did when I left being a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine for tech. So that's why we're here. So come and ask us your questions, because we really want to help you. Before we do, let me tell you about a few things that we have going on. Right now, we have an incredible opportunity with a 45% discount on all of our training programs right now. We may never have this ever again at this level of discount, so take advantage of it. It's until New Year's. In addition to that, I want to tell you that tomorrow we have our completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, and it'll be a great time. I will tell you everything that you need to learn to get your first cloud architect job. We will cover the cloud architect job. We will cover what we do in our job. We will cover all the skills you need to learn. And I promise you, at least 50 to 60% of them are not technical. And we're not hands-on engineers as architects. And it's sad to me because I work with people who have been training to be architects, and they've learned every other skill other than architecture. Architects don't code. Architects don't configure. We design solutions to improve our customers' business performance. And we'll talk about the role. We'll talk about how to get hired when you lack experience. We'll talk about, if you're an engineer, how to convince people you're now an architect, because it's a massive career transition from two completely unrelated careers. We'll teach you how to skip HR, and I will spend 90 minutes with you on Zoom, answering any questions you might possibly have to help you build your best career. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. And one last thing, we also have a free ebook to help you get your first cloud architect job. And you can also download that. It's in the link of this description of this video, and it's completely free. And my team will also pop that in the chat box. So bring me your questions so I can assist you, because I want you all to have an incredible career. One where you do what you love, one where you get paid so much you never have to think about what things cost when you buy things, and one where you're going to be happy for the next few decades of your life. So please do so. Now, my Chief Operating Officer is behind the scenes, Christopher Johnson. He's going to be bringing the questions today because some of our team is actually enjoying the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday. So Chris, would you like to bring me the first question? Danica GC, you want to become a cloud architect? Great, but you don't have a background in this area. It doesn't matter. What are the specializations one can choose as a cloud architect? Well, realistically speaking, there's a lot of options for your architect career. There's more enterprisey architects that are working in the cloud architect arena, but they focus on the entire end-to-end. Private clouds, public clouds, hybrid clouds, artificial intelligence, everything. And that's more of your enterprisey type cloud architect. Now, Danica, the people that are really good at business, the people that can really sell, the people that can have really good leadership skills, this is the role for them. It pays far more than any other technical versions, because the job of the architect is as following: to improve our client's business performance. And the architects with the most business acumen, the best leadership skills, the best sales skills, that are more, how do I provide digital transformation, they earn the most. Now, of course, we can have a cloud architect that truthfully focuses on security. They're called the cloud security architect. Now, they will focus on designing the end-to-end security systems for the organization, whether they be the demilitarized zone for remote access or web servers, for example, things that are publicly facing, whether it's an end-to-end encryption strategy, whether it's the security policy that the organization needs, whether it's the data loss prevention strategies, the security event monitoring kind of thing, whether it's locking down the systems that are there and looking at endpoint protection. It's kind of your cloud security architect. Now, there's also your cloud infrastructure architects. Now, your cloud infrastructure architects really focus on the underlying infrastructure. So for these, you're typically dealing with really good networking people or that are now working in here, and they get involved in the actual infrastructure, which means the routers, the switches, the wide area network, the WAN kind of strategy. And there's a lot of complexity to make systems high availability. That's my background. Actually, infrastructure, I went from infrastructure to enterprise for the most part. But I've done every architect role you can think of. Network architect, enterprise architect, business architect. If there's an architect job, I've had it in the last 25 years as an architect. And they're basically there. But Danica, here's the thing to remember. The more of a techie you are, the less you will earn. Because the more of a business executive person you are, the better you'll be able to influence your clients. The more you can influence your clients, the more you sell. And since we architects get a huge amount of commissions in forms of bonuses, that's going to be the best option for most people. So there are your typical specializations, but of course, you can have cloud architects that focus on artificial intelligence, and you can have cloud architects that focus on a lot of different things. So, but they're your main ones. Great question, Danica GC. Danica GC, for someone without formal technical education, what areas should you develop first to become a cloud architect? Well, Danica, there's two things. First thing that I need you to understand is the architect job is not a techie job. We don't code, we don't configure, we don't do maintenance or sysops, we don't do DevOps. Here's what we do, Danica. We typically approach our clients' executives, like the CEO, and we ask them, what is the strategy you desire for your business? Where do you see yourself now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, and 20 years from now? Because we need the business vision long before we think about tech. Then, Danica, typically what we need to do, so in order for that to occur, be able to speak to the executives, you need to have something called executive presence, which is showing you as a leader. You need to have something called CXO relevancy, or being relevant to the CEO. And you have to understand business, because without it, there's no architecture, it's only engineering. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Now, after we go through that, the next thing we do as an architect is we try to figure out the client's business architecture. What is the business architecture? Is how does that organization work today? How does the sales process occur? How does the supply chain occur? How is a product delivered, for example? How is the customer supported with customer service? We need to understand all of it, and we need to map it out. And then, Danica, the next thing we need to do is work with that client to see how we want the business to operate in the future based upon their business vision. So now we're dealing with business process engineering as well. We're also talking about, to figure out the business, we've got to speak to a lot of stakeholders from different departments. So we're going to need some really good stakeholder management skills. We're going to need extremely good communication skills. And we're also going to need some leadership skills. Now, after that, Danica, once we figured out the business strategy and how the business we wanted to operate in the future, then we look at the organization's current technology system. And what is a cloud? The cloud is somebody else's network in a data center. So what does that mean? It means you need to understand all of those networking and data center technology. You don't need to understand code, but things like servers and server virtualization and containers and container orchestration and storage area networks, for example, business applications and the way they work and provide value, whether they be databases, ERP, CRM systems. So think about it as network, data center, et cetera, and cloud technology. Because I need to understand how the business operates today. And then what we do, Danica, is we apply the technology. We work backwards from the way we want the business to work. Then, Danica, typically somewhere along the line, we have to build a plan to let people know what kind of people they need to management and how to do this, which means we need some good project or program management skills as well. And I'm not talking about a certification. I mean management skills and people skills and leadership skills and sales skills and the ability to exercise influence. And then from there, we work with our client to develop a governance strategy. And then, Danica, we're off to the new client. And then an engineering team actually goes and builds this thing. Now, Danica, why are all these business skills so critical? Danica, I'm going to tell you that roughly 60 to 70% of all cloud architectures are complete and total disasters. CIO magazine called them abject failures, which I agree. Some data from McKinsey shows that 70% of all technology projects fail to deliver. Recent article in CIO magazine found that over 50% of cloud architectures are disasters. Another good argument from Gartner showed that 75% of ERP projects fail. And why is this, Danica? Because instead of doing what I just told you to do, which is what the architect does, engineers get in there and they start working on tech. But we need to understand what problem we're trying to solve before we get into the tech. And that's why companies have architects. And that's why architects, if you work for, say, AWS, Azure, Cisco, IBM, Google, we're not allowed to touch the client's technology because we're really dealing with those business processes. So I'd say leadership skills, sales skills, executive presence, communication skills, CXO relevancy, and network and data center design skills. Now, here's the good thing, Danica. Tomorrow, I'm going to host a webinar. And on this webinar, I will cover every single skill you need to be a world-class cloud architect that can get hired anywhere. So do that, and also download the completely free book on how to get your first architect job. I also list every single skill you need there. Everything from what's needed on the IP side to the routing side to everything else. It's a comprehensive list. And work backwards from that list, and you'll have the skills you need. Great question, Dana. Chris, we can bring on the next one. Dana, could you see, I know certifications won't get me hired. Good, but they will help you get in interviews, yes. Should you leave the certification prep for later, after you develop cloud architect skills? Danica, the certification is the last thing you should do. I'm going to tell you right now, Danica, there is no certification that teaches architecture. So if we look at the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, here's what I can tell you. Here's what they teach. The name of an AWS service and how to configure that. Do you know what the amount of configuration that an architect does? 0. And we can't use silly proprietary AWS names either. And, you can keep that in the back of your mind. So, I can't talk to my customer about their EC2 instances or S3 buckets. No, I can talk to them about their 10,000 virtual machines and their block storage, object storage, and file storage, but I can't use any of those ridiculous names that the companies pay millions of dollars to make up funny names for, so you don't know what the tech is. And I don't configure things. So, things like the AWS Certified Solution Architect, Associate, and Professional are really geared towards admins, not architects. So, here's why the certification should be the last thing. What if I told you the average cloud architect earns over $16,000 a month? And what most people do is they get certified and then nobody's interested in them. And when you interview them, they know nothing because the certification is teaching somebody else's job. So it's better that so there's no function for us other than getting an interview. Now, Danica, I know many people that have actually gotten cloud architect jobs with 0 certifications. Delroy Batt was an example of that. We trained him. He got his incredible cloud architect job with 0 certifications and 0 experience. I can give you lots of other people like Jeffrey West, who transitioned with a cloud practitioner, or Robert Welch, who we trained and got a great job. Say, it's about your skills. But if you don't understand the technology, a very intro-level certification like the AWS Solutions Architect Professional might take you 6 months. But if you have the skills, you can prep for it for about 2 weeks. So Danica, I want you to see you spend your 6 months developing real skills and real knowledge, because that's going to get you hired. And then once you know, spend a couple of weeks and pass those silly AWS certifications, but you'll have the skills from the training you did versus that. Now, I realize that, and I mentioned that the average cloud architect earns $16,000 a month. Believe me, a good one earns double that. But, I'm talking about average. So if it takes somebody 6 months of wasted time to do a silly certification and they have no employable skills whatsoever, they lost $96,000 of earnings, 6 months times $16,000 a month. But if somebody trained for skills for 6 months and then they do a certification, they may be already ready to get hired, and they can do that all in, say, 7 months. So always skills first, certification last. So I hope that makes sense to you. Luciano Pareto. Mike, you don't know, how do you know you're ready to start interviewing for a solutions architect job? When you can actually have the skills. So for the students in my program, we do architectures constantly. And I like to tell my students, when I give them an architecture and they know what to do and how to do it, poof, they're really great. They're really great. And keep that in the back of your mind. So here's what I would tell you. If I could give you a business problem and you can solve it, you're ready. So I'll give you a couple examples. If I told you that I had a bank, that I'm working with a bank, and the bank has an algorithmic trading system, and if we can get those systems to be 1 nanosecond faster to the competition, it'll equal an additional $100 million a year of earnings. How would you design it? And if you can know that and think about that instantly, you're ready. If I were to tell you that I'm working with an airline that's struggling to contain their fuel costs, what kind of architectures could you design to help them improve their business performance? You're ready. If I told you that I had a hospital that wants to be the hospital of the future, what kind of technologies could you use to make that hospital improve its quality, improve the customer experience for the people that are inside of that hospital, and reduce adverse effects? Could you think about that and start coming up with solutions of things to understand it, at least having a hypothesis in your mind? Now, then you know you're ready. Now, when someone says, Mike, I can configure an S3 bucket, I say, that's not our job and it's not ready. So these are architect skills. When you can do these, Luciana, when you can run up to a stranger in an elevator and in 60 seconds or less explain what cloud computing is, you know something. And I'm not talking about these ridiculous definitions of this on-demand, blah, blah. I'm meaning nothing to me. But can you really explain about all the storage area networks, what it is, how they work, why organizations would use them? Can you start thinking about how you would design your secure demilitarized zone for different applications based upon what's needed? That's how you know you're ready. When you can give a presentation and people there. And because the architect's job is to sell, start trying to practice selling things. For example, my wife likes 3 or 4 kinds of food. My favorite food is Ethiopian. Her favorite food is Greek because she's Greek and she's not an experimenter. When my sales skills are good enough, I can convince my wife to go to Ethiopian food with me, which is my absolute favorite in the world. If my sales are not, I go to the same restaurant every single time. So good sales skills, good leadership skills, good executive skills, good levels of emotional intelligence, strong levels of business acumen, strong levels of executive presence, strong levels of CXO relevancy, and the ability to understand technologies and design them, you're ready to start interviewing. Great question, Luciano. Chris, we may go to the next one. Luciano, what should you do to transition to a solutions architect career if your resume only has software development stuff? Luciano, the first thing I need you to realize is what we do has nothing to do with software development. And that's okay. So you're going to come in and you're going to have to start like everybody else. So here's what happens when you come from a software engineering background. Most of those people are really good with software. But what is the cloud? It's somebody else's network and data center. And most software people don't understand networking and data. So the first thing you're going to have to do is learn the network and the data center. Why the network and the data center? Because all clouds are just networking and data centers. So that means the storage area networks. That means things like load balancers. That means routers and switches and firewalls. What are we using them for? And all the technology that goes there. It also means for remote access and VPN concentrators. We're talking about next generation firewalls. We're talking about a good, strong understanding of high availability system design. We're talking about a really good understanding of security architecture and network architecture. Then we're really talking about, the applications that could be run. And to some degree, the software people have a good understanding, like there's that. Now we still have to build up your sales skills, your executive presence, your leadership skills. your emotional intelligence, your CXO relevancy, and your business acumen. And you're going to have to get that training. And the next thing you have to do, Luciano, is to convince people you're not a software engineer. Wait, what? What's Mike talking about? The problem is most companies don't want an engineer to be an architect. An engineer thinks about the tech, and the architect thinks about the business. Now, Luciano, I've taken so many software engineers and database administrators and sysadmins and retrain them and get cloud architect jobs, and their salary's gone up by $100,000 or $200,000 a year. Because when they get a job with that level of experience they're worth much more. But it's going to take some rebranding. It's going to take significant new skills development. And you're going to be absolutely incredible career. So you have to change your thinking from the tech to the business. You have to change your thinking from software to networks and data centers, because the cloud is just somebody else's data center. And then when you're there, you're going to find yourself in a good things. And now I got to tell you, I've taken database administrators and gotten them $300,000 plus architect jobs. I've taken software engineers and gotten them $300,000 plus architect jobs. So your experience is good. Your experience is valuable, and life is cumulative. But just understand that what we have to do has nothing to do with hands-on coding, nothing to do with hands-on implementation. I personally like to say architecture is a job where we design a solution, we present the solution, and we sell and negotiate that solution to the client. So join me tomorrow on the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. I'd love to meet you, talk to you in person. We can have a face-to-face conversation, and we will cover every skill set. And like I said, I've transitioned more sysadmins, database administrators, software engineers, network engineers, you name it, to cloud architects. And quite frankly, I've also taken people like Jermaine, who was selling landscaping gear and gotten him his first enterprise architect job, or people like Noah, who was a social worker and got him his first architect job, or people like Jeffrey West, who we got his first architect job from geospatial imaging that he was doing before that, some kind of geology and where people would drill, don't know, or Pierre, who was operating sailboats, who we got him his first cloud architect job, or Daniel Bosa, who didn't even graduate high school, who we got his first cloud architect job, or Jennifer Emo, who we got our first cloud architect job for mental health. So you can do it. You're going to be great. Just understand it's a new set of skills. Change your mindset from the tech to the business. Learn the skills, and you will have a career that you will love. Absolutely love. Chris, we can go to the next one. Cloud Station, what is your take on AI security? There would be a devoted cloud career for cloud AI architects? So, Cloud Station, here's what I really want people to understand. I hate the name network architect. I hate the name enterprise architect. I hate the name cloud architect. Why? Why do I hate it so much? I hate it because if we're doing architecture, we're all doing the same thing. We're asking the clients about their vision of the business. We're actually figuring out how the business operates, and we're integrating strategies to make it better. Now, do I think there will be a cloud AI role? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But, the reality is it's just going to be a focus. So I do think there will be a cloud AI role, which will be a specialty role. And I think it's going to be a really strong role for a while. And we do a lot of AI work actually in our program as well, because any good cloud architect needs to be very familiar with AI. So the answer is yes, I believe it, and we're going to be more of it. But truthfully, I just would prefer that everybody go be called an architect, and then you focus on what you want to be, because that's really what we're doing. We're designing solutions. Cloud Station, what is the most malicious forms of AI coming up, and what is your position on the future of cloud security? I think we've got to take two things directly. So AI is not good or AI is not bad. So there's no malicious AI. There's malicious people that use AI for bad things. It's kind of like a car. You could use it to drive to work, use it to drive your kids to school, or you could use it as a weapon and run people over. It's not the car itself that's the problem. It's actually the person behind it. So I see a tremendous amount of phishing where people are using AI to make it look and feel more natural than before. I see AI generating an incredible number of scripts, people asking it, which can then be used to exploit Kali Linux tools, etc. So, but it's not the AI. It's the person behind it and how they use it. What if I told you that Coumadin itself, or warfarin, is used as rat poison because the rats eat it and they bleed to death? But what if I also told you that we prescribe Coumadin to people with a cardiac problem to keep them from getting strokes? It's how something is used. It's the manner that it's used, and it's the intent behind it. I don't believe there's any good or bad technology. I believe it's what people use the technology for and their intent that's there. So I don't see any malicious AI, but I do see malicious people using malicious AI. And whether a malicious person has a knife, a gun, or AI, or an axe, they can still do harm. But it's not, the axe doesn't do anything on its own, neither does a knife. They're just inanimate objects, the same thing as AI. Hope I answered your question there. Hi, Mike. I would love to know in your opinion and when we will start seeing the job market start to recover. And, well, I think there's a tremendous number of structural problems that are going on right now in the economy. But I don't think the economy is not that bad, all things considered. And I think there's a tremendous amount of things. So, right now we have a hyperinflationary environment, which most likely was related to overspending by the government and a prolonged period of low interest rates. So what the governments have done is they basically decided to raise interest rates to suck free money out of the economy. And by doing so, it made it more expensive for people and businesses to borrow. Now there's that. Now, up and up, I think we're dealing with two different economies for architects and engineers. It is my expectation that many more engineers will be losing their jobs and many more architects will be hired up and up. And here's the reason why. In the tech world, we've got your average person, your below average person, and your great people. Your great people never get laid off. I've been through 20 plus layoffs in my career. Nobody laid me off. I usually got promoted when others were laid off. But I worked hard and I didn't do what I thought my manager wanted. Every year I'd ask my manager, what do you want? What are your goals? What are your this? And let me help you get there. So I was always seen as there. But, artificial intelligence can write a Python script. Artificial intelligence can write a Terraform script. Artificial intelligence can write a Bash script or a Windows PowerShell script. So all those hands-on junior level jobs like admins and sysadmins, I see 50% of them being lost directly to artificial intelligence. Now, not the architects. Artificial intelligence creates jobs for architects. So I think we have to see some of the engineers get laid off before companies are going to start hiring in big droves again. Companies still have a lot of dead weight that they haven't cut yet. And one of the reasons organizations do layoffs is not because they need to save money. It's because they stack rank their employees from top to bottom once a year, and the bottom 10% typically are let go. Or back-end people that can be outsourced can be let go. For example, why would I hire a programmer in the US as a business if I can hire a programmer in India for a fifth of the amount of money, but the person in India is actually earning more money in local currency than the person in the US? So as more and more people say, I'm remote, I'm not going to the office, I want to work remote, the business has no reason to hire somebody in the US. If they're remote anyway, they can hire the engineers in the lowest cost parts of the world, and they're doing so. Now, by comparison, the architect has to go meet with the clients. That has to be done face-to-face and usually in person for a lot of it. Architects can't be outsourced overseas. Now we've got AI. Now we've got this new tech. Now we got this new tech. Now businesses have to figure out how to capitalize on it. That's not engineering. That's the architect job. So I think when interest rates go down, we're going to see massive hiring. I also see when companies get rid of some of their engineering positions, there's going to be a lot more hiring. And what we're seeing is big shifts towards big architecture jobs that pay so much more. In fact, up and up, We had a really great cloud engineering program that people beg me for every single day, and I stopped selling it about a year and a half ago. And I stopped selling it because I didn't think anybody should ever go into engineering in today's world. And I didn't want to sell a course to people where I didn't think they were going to have a massively successful career. So there's plenty of jobs out there. Companies are still hiring. And they're still interviewing. And every time I speak to recruiters or some of the people, I'm still seeing people that are interviewing and doing good. So, there's jobs out there. But I expect some of these redundant positions, your basic intro level software engineer, replaced by AI. Your basic sysadmin, replaced by AI. Your basic cloud admin, replaced by AI. Now companies have a huge budget and they're going to put it into the bigger, higher paying positions. Either the most elite engineers out there, because companies still need people to do it, but one really solid AI engineer with AI can do the work of 10 more junior engineers. Or you're going to have your architects, your high paid people earning more and more money. And, it's interesting. I now know many architects that earn $800,000 to $1 million plus a year as chief architects. When I started my career about 15, 20 years ago, we were getting paid about $250 as architects. You can see at that elite level, those architects are going much better. Hope that helps answer your question. Good question. Anna, I have enrolled in AWS DevOps. You're a beginner. Shall I make it for the AWS architecture with this course going? I don't actually understand what you mean. I will tell you that DevOps has absolutely zero to do with architecture. Zero. Which means that's fine that you know it. Life is cumulative. You just have to take a course like ours to learn how to become an architect, and you're going to be great. But Anna, I want to kind of make this clear. Ivan Tamba was a waiter before we got hired by AWS. Coyote was a college student before we got hired at AWS. They didn't have any training in anything before they came to us. And, it's every day for us. Balwinder was a stay-at-home mom before we got our first cloud solution architect job at Microsoft. Now, I have somebody like Oscar, who I got a great architect job at Google, who was a solution architect, but we got him a much better job after we trained him because we got him out of thinking that that tech and focused on the business. So you would do very well in a program like ours. You would learn architecture. I personally would tell you to get out of DevOps. I wouldn't go to DevOps right now for anything because a lot of that work can be automated, but you can't automate what we architects do. The person, so of course you'll be good. But Daniel Bosu was my student. He didn't graduate high school, but JP Morgan Chase hired him as an architect. Wallace Agana never worked in tech, and JP Morgan Chase hired him as an architect, first job. Al Legister was a really great guy. He and I were working on our patois, which is Jamaican language, together. Love the guy, really great guy. We trained him, and he got his first senior solution architect job over Deloitte with no experience. So what I'm trying to say here is, of course, we could train you, and anybody can get any job. Here's what I like to say. Nobody is born a physician. No one. Guess what? Nobody is born an airplane pilot, and nobody is taught an architect. It becomes an architect without training. So of course you can be incredibly successful, and I know how to get you there. So I hope I answered your question. If you want to follow up to that question, you want more, ask me a second question. And if any of you are out there and you want your questions asked, please ask me, and I'd love to help you. Could I please share the step-by-step process for designing a solution, Sabello? If you gave me 700 hours of training, I could make you an expert in doing it. But here's what I'll take it from a high level. The first thing you need to do is go find those companies' executives and see how they want to take their business in the future. First thing. And then you need to understand their business goals, because our architecture will either help or hurt those business goals. From there, we need to map out, how does the business operate today? How do we want to operate in the future? And we have to determine the gap between where they are now and where they want to be, and figure out what we need to do to close those gaps. Then we've got to understand the data that the organization has. How does that organization use their data? What do they use their data for? What could they use it for to get to those business goals and business vision we talked about? So we need to look at their old data architecture, create the future data architecture, and figure out what the gap is in between these things. Now we've got to go evaluate their technology, whether they be their business applications, their network, their data center, their cloud, their everything. How does it work today? What's going on? What's working? What's not? How do we want to redesign it in the future to support those business processes of the future, which are based upon that business vision? Now, once we figure out what that is and what the future architecture is, now we've got to bring it down in there. Okay, I need 1,000 virtual machines. Do I put them in my data center with a VMware type solution or a Windows Hyper-V type solution or a Linux KVM solution? Or do I turn my data center into a cloud running Nutanix software or Red Hat OpenStack software, for example? Or do I put it in one cloud or two clouds? Or do I do a hybrid multi-cloud, which is what most architectures are in today's world? So I've got to design that. And then I've got to replace my virtual machines with the silly names that these providers call their virtual machines, but it's just virtual machines. Then I've got to design the network for the performance I need, the security for the security requirements I need. I've got to select the right business applications to help that business operate that we want it to in the future, based upon that future business architecture, which is based upon that future business. Now, when we're done this, we've got to document our solution, and we've got to go present this solution to various stakeholders, tech professionals that work at the client, department heads that work in that client, and even executives, including the CEO, the CIO, and the CFO, and the CTO. Why do we have to go to the executives? Engineers don't say, I'm going to go buy your thing. The people that can write the checks, which are the C-suite, or that determine who the money is, so we've got to be there. So now we've got to present to all these stakeholders. We've got to go negotiate a business deal. And then after that, we have to come figure out who the governance strategies are and how many people we're going to need to hire either to deploy it, how many people that company needs to hire and manage it. And then we're done. Then we go off to the new client. And it's a wonderful, wonderful job. Best job ever. Now, in each one of those stages that I talked about, how to find that business vision, there's probably 50 to 100 hours of training that goes through each of those phases. Some of these phases have 300 and 400 hours of training. So I basically took, a career which pays more than the average physician and more than the average lawyer, who typically takes on $300,000 to $500,000 of student debt to be able to earn like this. So understand, there's a lot of training. This is not the kind of career that you can self-teach yourself. If you tried to self-teach yourself how to fly an airplane, the airplane would crash with the people in it long before you could fly it. If you tried to self-teach yourself how to be a doctor, many people would die along the way. And you can't self-teach yourself the architect career, because here's the thing. If you make a bad architecture, you can destroy $1 billion business like that. So that's why people need to be trained in this from experienced architects. But really, really great questions. Chris, we can go to the next one. And if you've got questions, ask them. Okay, Chris, we can go to the next one. Okay, so Sabella, Mike, you mentioned that one of the key skills for the solution architect job readiness is have the ability to solve business problems. Absolutely. So Fuller Shockley, does the role of a sales engineer have greater career progression than a software engineer? Fuller Shockley, the software engineering career is one of the worst careers possible if you actually want to progress in your career. I don't ever recommend software engineering careers unless somebody loves to write code. Because once people see you as a code, they call them code monkeys, people that just code and sit behind a desk all day long, it is a big fight to get past that brand. The closer you are to the technology, the less you will be paid. Why do I need to hire a software engineer in the United States? I want to make it clear, 100,000 US dollars is equivalent to $28,000 in India. Where do they have a better training program for programmers? India, not the United States. So If it costs somebody $200,000, and most programmers do not earn $200,000, but if it costs me $200,000 as a business to pay for a programmer in the US, it doesn't matter where somebody codes does. Everybody's saying, I don't want to work. I want to work remote. Why not pay $56,000 to the same person in India and hire 4 of them for the price of 1 in the US? So I see software engineering as a job that can be 50% replaced by AI, and whatever can't be replaced by AI, if a business is going to hire really smart people in Africa, they're going to hire them in Pakistan, they're going to hire them in India, and they're going to hire them in the Philippines and other places where they've got a great education at a low cost of living. But the sales engineer has to go speak to the client. So the sales engineer brings in money. So if you've got a sales engineer that's traveling from client to client to client, and they've got to communicate with people, you can't outsource them. Now they're closer to the business. The sales engineer could bump up their career after that to being a solution architect or a cloud architect or an enterprise architect and earn a few $100,000 more than they would as a sales engineer. So my recommendation to everybody is don't get into software engineering for any reason, unless you like it, and then just understand, if you get into software engineering, you're going to be treated like the help by your employer. And that's one of the reasons I don't like to be in engineering careers, because in the end, the architects are having steak and scotch and lobster. They're playing golf with their clients. And those engineers are coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning, working 16-hour days trying to fix stuff that's broken for a third of the salary. Well, Asaki, I was an engineer. I also worked as a sales engineer. And when I saw the life of those architects compared to what I was in any of those engineering roles, I wanted out of engineering so bad and so fast. And when I got out of engineering, it was the best thing that happened to me. Look, I love engineers. If there are no good engineers, I design an architecture, there's nobody to build it. I love engineers and I have deep respect for engineers. But after working with people for 20 years and boosting their careers and boosting their salaries, I feel bad to see somebody work so hard to get treated with such little respect like the engineer and paid so little. So it's up to you. But the closer you get to the technology, the less you'll be paid, the less you'll be respected. The closer you are to the business, the more you'll earn and the more respect you'll get and the easier your job is. I remember a world where I worked as a sales engineer. I had been an architect before, and I took a sales engineer job with a great tech company. The sales reps were earning $300,000 and $400,000 a year, and the sales engineers were earning $150,000. The architects were earning $350,000 at this company a long time ago, at $250,000 to $350,000, and the sales engineers were earning $150,000, and the back end engineers that were writing the code at that time were earning $80,000 to $100,000. So it's that. So the farther away, the more you can get away with what you can do for the business with tech, the more you'll earn. The closer you get to sitting behind that desk all day long, the worse you will do. Keep that in the back of your mind. But you got to do what makes you happy. If you're not happy selling, designing, and meeting with people, you could always be an engineer. But if you want to be an engineer, like a software engineer, please, I beg you, make sure you develop your business skills, your leadership skills, your sales skills, your communication skills, your executive presence. And that way, when companies lay off software engineers because they've outsourced 50% of it to AI and the rest overseas, you can move into an architect job or a sales engineer job where you're not going to be pigeonholed and stuck behind the desk. Keep that fellow shocking, you'll do great. Chris, I believe we can go to the next one. Andy Chen. Hi, is it meaningful to go to the cloud after being a database for 20 years experience? Andy Chen, it depends on the career you want. If you just want to be a database administrator, guess what? Whether you're managing an Oracle database in the data center or AWS or Azure or Google, it's the same thing. It's the same database. It's just on a virtual machine versus hosted in the cloud versus hosted in a data center. So none of that's different. Now, if you wanted to move into a role like an architect after 20 years experience, yeah. I took a couple of DBAs that had $150,000 to $180,000 jobs. They left my program with $300,000 plus enterprise architect jobs or principal architect jobs. Poof, like that. Some of them earn even more. In fact, I had a student last year that did, and it wasn't even from my elite program, which really maximizes people's salaries. It was just from our basic $2,500 cloud architect career development program that got a $409,000 job. And they had done all those kind of hands-on things for years. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But it sure is. It sure it is. To me, I like to get better in some way every single day of the week. And I don't ever think there's not a good reason to move up if you want more out of life. So I don't think, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, there's ever a time to rest on your laurels. I think you should always focus on a new goal and getting to your goal. And it doesn't matter what those goals are, but go after your dreams. If you love what you do and you're super happy and you don't want any changes, stay. But if you're looking for a new challenge, if you're looking to earn more, if you are looking for anything else, poof, you're in great shape. And go for something new. I practiced internal medicine first in my life. I went to school for 7 years, became an internal medicine nurse practitioner, had my own office. But I love tech, so I went into tech. I was a network engineer for 6 months, and I said, I don't ever want to do any more engineering, and instantly moved into architect jobs. And for me, that was the best thing that I ever could have done. But you got to be happy. You can't do what you don't love, because if you don't love it, your employer will feel that you don't love it. You won't take it to heart, and that will be career limiting. So do what you love. Plus, personally, I don't ever want to be happy. I practice medicine. I know how the game ends. And in the end of the day, I've never seen someone that was on their deathbed say, Mike, I wish I had more money. I wish I got that promotion. They've said, I wish I had more time with family. I've had some people say, I wish I was a nurse practitioner like you. Mike, I wish I did this because I didn't like what I did and I lost all these years and I wasted it for no reason. I wish I had more time with my family. I wish I went to Greece or sailed around the world. I've heard people say this all day long, but it's never been, Mike, I wish I had more money. So kind of keep that. But I happen to like having a job that treats me well, where I get a lot of respect, where I can buy anything I want and never think about what it costs. I kind of like that. And I like that, these architect careers have enabled me to take care of my family, both my immediate family and my extended family. And that's something that makes me feel really good and a sense of pride. So different things make us all tick. Great questions, Andy Chen. Elizabeth James. Mike, in your experience, a company tend to hire more in which months of the year? All in all, it's not really month dependent. It's more economy dependent and it's more need dependent. If there's a new disruptive technology, a technology which will change the way we live, work, and play, for example, there'll be instant hiring in that field. Instantly. If the Fed were to lower interest rates by 0.5 percentage point, like 50 basis points, there'll be instant hiring. If a certain macroeconomic force occurs, there can be instant hiring. So it's not more or less. Now, I will typically say that during holidays, it typically slows down. So I would say between Christmas and New Year's is typically slow. I will typically say during summer vacation period, in the end of August, it typically slows down a little bit. But all in all, companies hire year long. It has nothing to do with what time of the year it is. It's not really related to each month. So it's more related to macroeconomic forces that are there. And it's also related to the organization's fiscal calendar. So what do I mean by this? Some companies begin their fiscal year when they start counting for accounting purposes in January. So the first quarter ends in March 30th. The next quarter ends 3 months later. Some companies like Cisco, when I worked there, started their fiscal year, I think it was in August. So around August every year, there was a ton of hiring. Because typically at the end of a fiscal year, what organizations do is they cut their dead weight, the bottom 5 to 10% of the people they have, they get rid of them. And then they hire a good 10 or 15% of really good, really strong people. That's pretty typical in the tech industry. It's especially typical in your big tech companies like a Cisco, where they usually follow the Jack Welch management method. And Jack Welch was known for his either be number 1 and 2 in your field or sell off the business, or take extra special care of your top 10%, take good care of your medium 80, and get rid of the bottom 10%. So when those things occur, typically right after a layoff of the dead weight, there's typically hiring. And it may not be that the person's dead weight. Often it's the bottom 10% of performance, but it also might be that the person's part of a division that's getting cut. So in a good economy, companies hire a lot more service and support people and back-end engineering. In a bad economy, they continue to hire people that are sales reps, cloud architects, solution architects, sales engineers, or anybody that brings money in the company. And when the economy is rough, they get rid of expense people, HR, recruiters, marketing people, and back-end engineering. So that's typically what's going on with a layoff. It's either the bottom 10% that the company's trying to get rid of, or the company doesn't have a bottom 10% and they're getting rid of these back-end positions. Actually, every company has a bottom 10%, but I keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, that's typically what's going on. More related to the economy and less related to any specific month of the year, except those fiscal years. And the quarterly times, the end of a quarter, good earnings, maybe bring in some people, etc. But each business unit has its own fiscal calendar. So Amazon's fiscal calendar and Cisco's fiscal calendar and IBM's fiscal calendar may all be scheduled on different times. Great question, Elizabeth. James, Chris, we can move to the next one. Dingelman, what is the difference between a security architect and an enterprise security architect? Dingelman, there is no such thing as an enterprise security architect. There are security architects. Enterprise architects, by very definition, focus on the entire end-to-end business, everything from the business architecture, the technology, or the security architecture, all of it. And a security architect only focuses on security. So there is no enterprise security architect. Now, what you might be thinking is a security architect that works in an enterprise. But let's be fair. A mom and pop business that has 3 people doesn't hire a security architect for $250,000 a year. They don't need them. They can get away with the silly things like a AWS WAF and Shield and a net access list and a security group and call it done. But a real business isn't going to use AWS WAF. They're going to use an industrial firewall from thinking Palo Alto or Fortinet or Cisco or Checkpoint. None of the basic stuff that the cloud providers would do. So they need security architects. So pretty much all security architects work in the enterprise space for the most part. And a security architect designs the end-to-end solution, whether that be on the cloud, the data center, the security policy, what kind of training does the organization need? Do the people need anti-malware training, anti-phishing training, anti-social engineering training? What do the demilitarized need zones look like? What's the end-to-end strategy? Are we adopting a zero trust architecture or defense in depth or some combination? How are we locking down the systems themselves? What kind of data loss prevention strategy we're going to use? What kind of security event monitoring systems are we going to use? What kind of encryption strategies are we running across the network? What ways do we limit access to the network so people can't get on the systems? What kind of physical security do we need on the connections to the systems? That's all security architect work. So really no such thing as an enterprise security architect. Good question, though. Chris, we can go to the next one. Hi, Mike, please suggest any good books for a solution architect. Sabello, the only thing that I can tell you, since there are no good books that I've ever seen for solution, actually that's true. So the Cisco has a Cisco Certified Design Expert book that's quite good that explains some of the things that we architect do. But really, what are the books that you need? You need to understand the network and the data center. And then you also need books on how do you put those pieces together. But that's not there. It doesn't really exist. Now, there's lots of good textbooks on macroeconomics, which you need to read. Lots of good textbooks on microeconomics. Lots of good textbooks on management. Lots of good textbooks on finance. Lots of good textbooks on accounting. Now, Sabella, if I gave you a book list, it would cost you at least $5,000 for these books. And our course is half price and 45% off is there. But you're talking with about a big knowledge base. But anything that's going to teach macroeconomics or finance is going to be good reading. Any books that are going to talk about marketing is going to be good reading. Any books that are going to be talking about project management, and I don't mean Billy Bob's book that they self-published. I mean real books like a McGraw-Hill would write, or a kind of textbooks that would be used in an MBA program. They're books that are going to teach those skills. Kind of keep those in the back of your mind. Anything that you would see in an MBA program is fair game for reading as an architect. And then, there are books like Jeff Doyle has a routing TCP/IP, which is good for the architect. There's a book, Internet Routing Architecture from Bassam Halabi, which would be good. The Cisco CCDE curriculum has some good books that are out there. There's good books on virtualization and container orchestration, and there's things. So there's a lot that you need to do, but there are no good books. Now, I've seen a bunch of books from what I call the manufacturers that are written by people that have never had an architect job before. That's the majority of them. And they're such garbage, I wouldn't even recommend them to you. I've yet to see a good architecture book that's been published, except for the Cisco Certified Design Expert book. And even that is too network-centric for these kind of solutions architect jobs, but at least it explains architecture. I can tell you that the TOGAF Architecture Development Method is a book you can get. I believe you can buy it. You can buy the stack for a few $100s, and that's a good one. We have a membership with them, so we don't pay for the book itself. We have the membership. There's like 350 major architect organizations in the world, and they're all TOGAF members. Companies like IBM and Microsoft, etc., that are part of it, and we're part of it as well, because our focus is architecture. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But business books, business textbooks, networking books, data center books, security books, not hands-on how-to design them. But most of the stuff on cloud that I've seen out there is a disaster. It's really terrible. If it was good, I wouldn't have come out of retirement to create this program. I just couldn't find anything that was good that I could find out there. So I hope that helps. Andy Chen, is it meaningful to go to the cloud? Yeah, we covered this one, Chris. But we didn't get to the next one Andy Chen asked. What type of leadership skills? We covered this one as well. Kevin Angelo, if a job description asks for have experience working with 10 million projects, how would you meet that criteria? Kevin, you're a student. I've told you I don't care about job descriptions ever. Job descriptions are meaningless to me. Job descriptions are a comedy routine. I have never had more than 10% of the skills in a job description, and I've never been on an interview. So don't worry about it. You have to have the skills to be an architect, and Kevin, you're soon developing them. And I told you I think that you're about 50 to 60% there before you're ready to interview, and you're very smart and very good and very capable. So you've got a great future. But I wouldn't be talking about projects. If they want projects, they aren't architect jobs, they're engineering jobs. Now, Kevin, I don't know how I could say it any other way. Chris and I had a VP of a cloud company, and we looked at his job description and said, you have implementation here. And he laughed and he said, sorry, it's a cut and paste job description. So if Chief Information Officer magazine published an article on what does a cloud architect do and what are the cloud architect skills, and they did it because they saw job descriptions that weren't related to architecture. So I've never seen a job description that matters. Here's the only way you can ever get a job description. When you get on an interview and they ask, do you have any questions? You ask this question. Mr. Manager, so let's say Chris is the manager. Chris, could you tell me what your goals are and the company's goals? Because I want to know if I was part of your team, I could help make you more successful. And then Chris would tell me his goals. I'd like to achieve this. I'd like to achieve this. I'd like to achieve this. Kevin, that's your job description. Now, you could have two managers in the same company that all have the same ridiculous job description that's been cut and pasted or written by HR. And they each have a different set of desires for you based upon their goals. So You can have 500 different kind of architects doing different things at the same company based upon their manager that's different. So when a job description says 10 Olympic gold medals and 50 years experience, I laughed. The first job I had, which was a senior network engineer, they wanted 10 years of experience. I had 0. Didn't matter. They hired me. What I also thought was really hilarious was, the number of people that I've got. 2 years later, I had a principal architect job, which wanted 15 years experience, and I had 2. So, I don't worry about job descriptions. I worry about what are the skills for the role and being good at them. Because job descriptions, to me, I've never had more than 10% of what's on it, and I've never not got a job offer. And I've only interviewed with 5 companies and accepted offers with 5 companies, and 2 of those 5 companies gave me a better job than the one I interviewed for because I wowed them and impressed them. So if you're an architect, here's the skills to be able to design, present, and sell a solution, to manage stakeholders, to lead, to exercise influence, to give a killer presentation. That's the skill set. The rest of it, don't worry about. Philip, do I teach other cloud careers other than cloud architecture? If yes, what do you teach and how long are the courses? Philip, we teach cloud architecture, we teach enterprise architecture, we teach cloud security architecture. Philip, I don't teach any engineering careers. First, I'm not an engineer, I'm an architect. And Philip, I don't believe in teaching a career that I don't know. Now, I had hired some extremely good cloud engineers to teach a cloud engineering program, and we stopped selling it. And why did I stop selling the cloud engineering career, even though students beg me for it every day? Because I don't believe cloud engineering is a career for the future. I think AI is going to do 50% of these engineering careers. And that's why I only focus on architecture. So I teach what I know. I teach what I'm an expert in. And whether it's a cloud architect thing or a security architect or a network architect or an enterprise architect, we teach architecture careers, and we are a 100% architecture-focused company. And by doing so, we've been featured in hundreds of magazines for the work we do. We're rated #1 school of cloud computing, but now we're 100% focused on architecture careers because they are the careers of the future. And many of these engineering roles are careers of the past. And I don't want to train somebody for a skill that I think 50% of the people are going to get laid off, like software engineering or cloud engineering. I do appreciate asking the question, but we are completely focused on architecture because that's what we know. That's what we're good at. And that's, we do what we're best at, not what we don't know enough at. There are so many people out there, Philip, that I was a bank teller and I was almost homeless in a dead-end job. And today I can teach you how to become a great cloud engineer or DevOps engineer. What happens is we have to retrain those people to become cloud architects because they're not going to be hireable. Or the people on Udemy that have a course that have never worked in the cloud that have sent me a message, hey, could you train me? And I'm like, not if you're selling a course that's based on stuff you don't know. So to me, I can only do what I'm great at. I can only teach what we know. And I only want to teach things that I know that, somebody pays us $2,500, hopefully they get a $250,000 job 2 years later. Because I just want to change lives. I want to make people's lives better. Now, Philip, that cat that you have over there, which looks like it cheated at me, boy, that cat's beautiful. I absolutely love cats, big cats, little cats. And if you haven't seen it on Amazon and you have access to Amazon, there's a movie called The Wolf and the Lion. I just saw it the other day about a wolf and a lion cub that become friends. It may be one of the best things I've ever seen in the last few years. I highly recommend it if you like cats. Andy Chen, what type of leadership skills and mindset do we need to gain in control as a successful cloud solution architect? Andy, 100% of your focus is on how do we improve the client's business. Engineers think about tech, architects think about business. So let's talk about these leadership skills. Andy, architecture is a team sport, meaning it may take 5 to 50 of you to design the architecture and 2 days to 12 months based upon how complex it is. I work on billion-dollar architectures that take 6 months to design with teams of 30. So you have to have the following. You have to have the ability to what's called exercise influence. Because if you can't, you're not going to convince people to work with you that don't work for you. Like you can't fire somebody, but you got to bring them on your team, which is very hard. It's called dotted line management. And that's based upon your ability to exercise influence. Sales skills. You're constantly selling. In fact, if we don't sell, we don't have a job. So you're going to have to learn how to sell. Now, you're also going to have to learn how to motivate your teams, and you're going to be building teams constantly, and you need to be able to motivate them. You're going to have to be able to have difficult conversations, which are going to occur. You're going to have to develop a level of empathy to see things that others can, so you can connect with them better. You're going to have very high levels of emotional intelligence. You're going to be giving a presentation, 2 or 3 of them every single day. So you're going to have good presentation skills. Now, you are going to be constantly negotiating with your clients and negotiating things. So you're going to have really good negotiation skills. Now, Andy, you're going to need executive presence. Watch, I'll turn my executive presence off. Hi, my name's Mike, and I'm a cloud architect. Nobody's going to listen to me. Hi, my name's Mike. I'm a cloud architect, and I'm here to help you with executive presence. So you're going to need a lot of that. Now, you're also going to need what's called CXO relevancy. If you talk to the CEO the same way you talk to a techie, you're done. Now, Andy, I'm going to tell you how I learned these and why I created this course. I did one. First, I used to practice medicine and internal medicine as a nurse practitioner. I learned a lot of these skills in medicine. Next, I did 1 3/4 MBAs. And Andy, those skills that I just talked about, that exercising influence, the presentation, the sales, I've taken about $100,000 of training after the MBA programs and after that. And most of that was paid for by my employer at Cisco and other organizations because that's how important it was. So those are your leadership-y type skills that really move. And the mindset has to be business, business, business. And the mindset also has to be objective. Some of the most dangerous things I see are the AWS certified people. Oh, this is simple. WAF, Shield, DynamoDB, ECS, and Amazon Aurora. First, they've already solved the problem they don't know. And the first thing they think is, oh, I know AWS tech, so I'm going to put it there. An architect says there is no best tech. What is the business problem we solve and what kind of technology? A real architect doesn't prefer serverless or cloud or data center. That's bias. They focus on what can I do to make the clients happy. So Andy, it's the same thing that a doctor would be. When you go to the doctor, you want them focused on getting you better. Imagine a doctor that only prescribed Pfizer drugs. Here you can have Zithromax. Here you can have this injection. Here you can have this. Lipitor. And only prescribe Pfizer drugs. That's like being AWS certified and say, I only want to use AWS. Now, Andy, how many people would die if the doctor did that? And instead of taking all the drugs from every drug company ever manufactured, limit themselves to Pfizer. Well, it's the same thing in an architect here. Getting it all on AWS or all on Azure or all on Google. No, because Oracle makes a better database than a cloud provider does. Palo Alto, Fortinet, Cisco, and Checkpoint make far better firewalls than any cloud provider does. Kubernetes is going to function much better in all your clouds than Elastic Compute Service, which only works in one. So kind of think of it that way. So think about being a customer advocate. How do I improve my customer? How do I make them more successful? And if that's your focus, you'll be a great architect. If your focus is on tech and building the tech, you become the worst architect. And why do I say the worst architect? Because, Andy, over 50% of architectures are complete disasters. And why is that? People focus on certification and things that are taught in certification, which has nothing to do with making your clients successful. They're all about hands-on engineering tests, which we don't do as architects. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind and you'll be in good shape. Great question. I'm glad you had it. Abraham would like to know if the Go Cloud Career Program provides lifetime access once enrolled. Abraham, if you join any of our programs, if it's non-live, it's lifetime access for the main parts of the program. If you're in the live program, you have 1 year of live classes and unlimited to the online parts of the program. Because for us, I don't just want to train you to be an architect. Each week when we teach a new class, we pop it in the architect program. So the program gets better every week. Each week, another 6 hours of training at least is added to the program. And many of our students have graduated our program. And graduation for us, Abraham is hired. Graduation is not when you finish sort of thing, it's when you're hired. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. So I would keep that in the back of your mind. Once you're our student, you are our student, and you will stay in our live classes for up to a year. And occasionally we extend that longer if we need, but nobody needs more than that. And those online portions are there indefinitely, except for the labs. That's for 16 weeks. But labs are honestly completely irrelevant in the world of cloud architecture. We just have labs so that if anybody ever asks, have you done it, you can do it. Plus, our labs are a little different. When somebody else will go configure something basic on the cloud, and we do that too. Our students will build their own cloud. They will build all the technology first that makes the cloud possible, and our students will build their own cloud. And that way, when everybody else is like, look, I set up an S3 bucket, my students are like, I built a cloud. Who's more competent? Who's more energetic? Who's willing to go above and beyond? And those are the things that employers are looking for. Great questions, Abraham. We'd love to train you, by the way. Please help me provide a roadmap for becoming an AWS architect to have the right mindset. How important are AWS networking and AWS storage? Okay, so Anata, first thing I'm going to tell you is the AWS networking is the most silly intro-level certification in the world. That's not networking. In fact, when we teach it, we have to teach networking because the AWS networking is nothing. I also will tell you that I wouldn't waste my time on AWS storage. I would learn storage. Why would I learn storage? Well, it's for the following reasons. 98% of clients all use multiple clouds. 98%, which means if you limit yourself to AWS, only 2% of employers could potentially hire you, which means 98% can't. So get out of thinking AWS. You need to think cloud architecture because 98%. So what does that mean? It means I want you to download the completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job Guide, and I want you to come tomorrow to the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. But what are you going to have to learn? You're going to have to learn the business skills, the sales skills, the executive presence, the leadership, the emotional intelligence, the negotiation skills, the ability to have the business acumen, the ability to build a business case and an ROI model, the ability to negotiate a $1 billion deal. Then you need to learn all those networking and data center technologies. They're all the same on all clouds. So don't waste your time learning AWS architecture. Learn cloud architecture. Same way you wouldn't waste your time learning how to get certified in driving a Honda. You'd learn how to drive a car. So you're going to have to learn your servers and your server virtualization, your containers and your container orchestration, and the same storage area networks that exist in all cloud providers. You're going to have to learn the business applications that exist in all cloud providers, the security appliances and devices that are out there to provide enterprise-grade security. Your whole focus is learning how to design a solution to improve a company's business performance. So first thing, business first, tech is second. This job is 50 to 80% business and 20 to 50% tech. So first thing you need to focus on is business. Business. The second set of skills that you need to are design, and they're completely different. And it's a big list that I'm going to give you, and it's going to take 30 minutes to go over that list. So join me tomorrow and download the free guide, and we'll cover that list extensively there. It's a free webinar. You can ask questions live on Zoom. I can even assess you and get baseline you if you want, see where you're at, see if you're ready to apply those types of things. Freedom Lands, can a reserve in the military get employment opportunities as a cloud architect? Absolutely. I work with many cloud architects and many enterprise architects and other people that are still in the reserve and the military, and they're there. In fact, Freedom Lands, you want to hear one of the most impressive things I'd ever seen? Most people know that I love Cisco and I worked at Cisco. Many people know my affiliation to that company. And, you know, when I was at Cisco, there was a period of time where many American soldiers were sent to Iraq and Afghanistan. And while they were there, the CEO, out of his own money, personally paid the soldiers that were sent overseas to be there. Now, Freedom Lands, being in the military, will open up more opportunities for you. And why? So one of the things employers have is finding people that can take direction. People in the military know how to take direction. One of the problems employers find is it's hard to find someone that's tough enough to get the job done with the grit or the mental toughness. Military people typically have degrees of mental toughness. Military people are taught sometimes that they can't quit until they win. And that's a strong asset. Plus, many organizations give bonuses to people that have been in the service and they can appreciate. So, personally, it'll help you in your career having a military background. And being in the reserves is great. What's it going to be? A couple of weeks in the summertime that you have to go away, and you can use your paid vacation time to do it. So, generally speaking, not an issue. In most cases, it's a strong asset. Now, there are companies that like military more than others. Some companies like Cisco and IBM and Microsoft, they're very pro-military, and they'll be a great place to work for. So now, many, many, many good opportunities. Military is all kinds of good, and most hiring managers see it as a strong asset. I know I do. And Freedom Lands, thank you for your service. I've been retraining warriors forever. I have a tactical background myself, and I think you're going to do incredibly well. Lopez, do all tech companies employ cloud architects, or do they contract it out for architecture? So, Lopez, as a rule, you can get contract architect jobs, but in most cases, you're not going to want to. Most architect jobs are hired by the company, employed by the company, and not contract. And here's why. Once you get to the elite level, and this is an elite level job, we're not looking for temps that can come in and come out and code and deploy stuff very quickly. Engineers, contractors all day long, architects not. Now, the other thing is, as an architect, you're part of that strategic leadership, which means if you're an architect in most companies, they're going to give you stock grants every year. They're going to give you big bonuses, and your salary is probably going to be higher by working for the company than it actually would be by a contractor. In engineering, people do contracts because they get paid very little as an engineer, and they can get paid twice as much, 3 times as much per hour to do a contract. And then it's constantly contract to contract to contract, but not so for architecture. These architecture jobs are predominantly hired by the company. They're maintained by the company, and they typically pay more than you'd work as a contractor. Because can I really hire a temp to come in, learn my business, and be able to design an architecture and have all the relationships they need inside of the entire company inside of 3 months? In most cases, no. Could they do it in 6 months? Sometimes. Depends on how smart the person is and how quickly they learn. So as a rule, these are not contractor jobs for architects. They are full-time employed jobs. There are some exceptions to the rule, but it's predominantly employed. The other time companies will use contractors is as follows. They may want to do a contract, and here's the way it works. Let's say, this is the way employers spot bad resumes as well. I might hire a contractor for 6 months. And I might do it because it gives me the opportunity to see if they're a good worker and a good architect. And if they're not, that contract ends at 6 months. And if they are, I'll either extend their contract for another year or two because it's near impossible to find someone, or I'll offer them a full-time job. Contractor budget's over, but here's your nice $250,000 job if you're interested. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Big jobs, not contracting. If you're talking about a network engineer for an implementation, yeah, that's a contractor. A software engineer, that's a contractor. Quick DevOps engineer, that's a contractor. But an architect, these are much higher paying roles. These are much more senior roles, and they're really usually full-time people. Great question. Someone in class works for a company and you want to be a security architect for. How close do you think I am and how would I best prepare? Dingleman, I don't know of any students named Dingleman. Now you may actually have another name, which I don't know what that is, but by the name Dingleman, I have no idea where you are to guide you in any way, shape, or form. If you want to ask me this question in class, or if you want to come onto the webinar tomorrow, I can ask you a couple of questions on that webinar. And from there, I can tell you whether you're close or not. But you're using a fake name here. And the name Dingleman 1 is not the name of any student that I know. And by a fake name, I can't go back and think of who you really are and actually know who you are. I hope that makes sense to you. Would a degree in IT management be beneficial for a cloud architect career? I already have associates in computer science. I feel like you already learn more in a course than you would in college. Lopez, a couple things. I don't recommend any degrees in technology. So if you told me, Mike, I want a degree in IT management, I would say save your time, effort, and money. Now, if you told me you wanted a degree in business, then I would say you've got something. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I am not a fan of degrees in college because they typically don't teach anything related to what matters. I am a fan of business degrees to learn more business acumen. Now, if you said, Mike, I want to get a bachelor's in business and an MBA later, I'd say that's a great plan. But I wouldn't waste my time in IT management. I actually think, Lopez, you would actually, instead of that, if you really wanted to boost your business knowledge, I'd probably tell you to take our elite program or our tech leadership program. I also know that which would probably cost you less and would teach you much more. But I would maximize the program you're in right now. I think you're going to do great. And then I'd probably look into what do I need to do to get an MBA later in my career, or take a program like our tech leadership program. Something like that, I think it's going to get you much further. You know, many years ago, degrees really mattered. But, you know, what's being taught in college now, it's more political ideations than actual skills. It's a lot of stuff that employers aren't really interested in. It's, in fact, the statistics are staggering. 54% of US employers completely drop their degree requirements. And we're not talking about little mini businesses. We're talking about companies like IBM. We're talking about companies like Google. So the big, big, big things that are out there. So for that, I'd say, you know, the degrees matter less. So first thing I would focus on is really focus on becoming the best architect I can. Then I would focus on getting as much business I have and kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's what I would actually do. And actually, I see you've got a second half to this question that says you have a degree in real world from running a business. Haha, but I know I can be more professional in business acumen. Yeah, it's going to be a different business acumen. Now, Lopez, I don't know how big your business is, but the kind of enterprises that we typically deal with the clients, we're talking into typically, you know, $20 to $100 billion a year in annual revenue. We're talking about financing. We're talking about capital raising. We're talking about what goes on in a publicly traded company. We're talking about big business cases. So it's a bit of a different environment than typically running a business. I'll tell you, I've run business units of all sizes, things upwards as much as things that would be, say, $1 billion in annual revenue versus, you know, smaller businesses, mid-sized businesses, and I have a few businesses myself. I would tell you a lot of those things are very similar, and you do have skills. I'm sure you have, but you're going to need that different business acumen, dealing with the organization's weighted average cost of capital, for example, in financing. You're going to be dealing with, you know, these big things, but no matter what you've done, it's going to be valid. And if you've had a small business that had 10 employees working for you, and I think if I remember correctly, you're in Mexico. So if you're running a $400,000 a year in Mexico business in Mexico with 10 employees, and it's a family business, yeah, you've got a lot of really good business skills, but I'd still polish it up with a business degree to learn some of those things that are not going to be taught in there. But honestly, that's a really good background. I'd finish our program right now. I'd maximize on what you have. And then after that, I would think about whether I wanted to do, say, an MBA or a bachelor's in business. Oh, you're in the US. I didn't realize that. For some reason, I thought you were in Mexico. But based upon a dialogue that we had somewhere along the way, but even better. So yeah, you're going to have a tremendous number of opportunities here. So good. But yeah, that's what I would do. Maximize our program, really squeeze it and get every last drop of lemon juice out of that lemon. And I use lemons because we're Greek and we put lemons in everything. So really squeeze that and maximize everything you can. And then focus on your business, your leadership, your sales, your executive presence, your emotional intelligence. So at this point, I think we're going to end a little early because I'm kind of really far behind on certain things. Today I try to dedicate as much free time as I possibly can, but it's a little bit slow, and I'm really delayed in questions, and I'm really delayed on some critical things that I need to attend to, specifically for a couple of press outlets that are reaching out to me today. So please take advantage of our 45% off year-end sale. I think you're going to be great, and it'll give you a chance to change your life for less than 2 days' pay for the average graduate. Join us on the free webinar tomorrow, how to get your first cloud architect job, and I'll see you there. And Christian, ask me that question in class, and I'll give you some feedback really soon, or ask me that question tomorrow on Zoom. Take care, everybody, and I hope to see you tomorrow on the webinar, the completely free webinar. We'll make it a great event for you. We'll make sure you learn a lot. And of course, it'll be live on Zoom, so you can ask any question you possibly desire. Take care, everyone.